So maybe this year or past, you decided to get very serious about LinkedIn and you went and you were doing posting, maybe you were doing commenting, you launched an outreach campaign, you did it for 1 week, maybe 2, maybe even 3, but then you quit. But you quit because you couldn't see it working yet. And what's important to understand is that the platform wasn't failing you. It's just that the feedback loop was and how our brains work. And that's exactly what I'm going to break down for you today. What we do on LinkedIn to get it to work, to get it to produce 2 to 3 calls a day, and perhaps why your previous efforts weren't quite where they needed to be. So there's a pattern that I constantly recognize that happens on the platform. People come on, they do some commenting, they do a little bit of posting, they try some outreach, and they do that for 2, maybe 3 weeks. But then this unconscious decision happens, and it's not one that they say, okay, I'm just not going to do this anymore. They just will miss a day, then they'll miss another, then they miss a few more. And then the routine that they promised themselves that they would commit to stops. And so that is not a discipline failure. It is a diagnosis problem that you're actually not realizing what is holding you back from getting the results. And the thing is that LinkedIn does not pay you weekly. It pays compounding interest. It takes time to get the results off of this platform. The platform that rewards patience most is the one that looks like the most broken to the impatient. When you show up consistently on LinkedIn, posting, commenting on the right content, reaching out to the right people, you're not generating immediate results. So you're actually depositing into what I call a trust account. So every comment that you leave in front of your ideal clients adds a tiny increment of that familiarity. Every post that demonstrates your expertise, that adds to a fraction more of the credibility. Every connection who sees your name in their feed one more time moves slightly further along the journey from being somebody completely cold and being a stranger to somebody I may consider having a conversation with. So these are very incremental, but they're not quite visible to you. There's no notification that says that, okay, now you're 40% of the way to being familiar enough that this person will respond to that DM. The prospect who will hire you in month 3 was watching you in week 1. They saw your comment. They clicked on your profile. They didn't reach out, not yet. But you registered, but you just had no idea. This is how trust compounds on a platform like LinkedIn. So it accumulates invisibly across dozens of small interactions, but it happens over a timeline that does feel very, very slow when you're in it. But then this shift starts to happen. Maybe a post really hits, a DM finally gets a reply. Someone who's been watching reaches out. And suddenly the pipeline looks very different from how it looked 2 weeks ago. And that's not because something big changed last week. It is the compounding actions that you started 6 weeks ago that you didn't quit on finally become visible. So every comment, every post, every impression adds to these little bit of touch points. We used to think that it required 5 to 12 touch points over a certain period. It requires so many more touch points. But what a lot of people don't recognize is that you can't just send an outreach. You can't just do commenting. You can't just do content. If you want to have the type of results where we book 2 to 3 appointments per day per profile, this is what we're doing. We do not take a day off from the process because let's be real, there's no greater activity than a sales-driven activity. Without sales, there is no company. So there's no purpose in putting time anywhere else other than a very designated sales process that ensures that we show up every single day and run on these actions because we know that in the moment, I don't need to see the result from it, that it's going to compound just the way that investments work and our portfolio works. If I looked at it on a day-to-day basis, I would think that I'm making no money and my money would be best put elsewhere. But when I zoom out on all the interest that is being compounded on a daily basis, the $10 that I put in 20 years ago is worth a whole heck of a lot more money because it's been sat in market in time. But I'm going to let you breathe a sigh of relief because this is not a discipline problem, even though it's going to feel like one. And that is because your human brain is wired for immediate feedback. It evolved from being an environment where actions had rapid, visible consequences. You found food, you ate, you avoided threat, you survived. That feedback loop was very tight. And those behaviors that produced fast, clear rewards, they got reinforced. But behaviors that produced nothing got abandoned. And LinkedIn produces almost nothing visible in the first few weeks of consistent activity. The compounding is happening The trust is being deposited. The familiarity is being accumulated, but none of it's going to show up in the form that the brain's going to be able to say, this is really good, keep going. There's no dopamine that's going to come in. There's no signal that's going to come in that's going to say, this is working. It's just going to be silence and a growing suspicion that you're just wasting your time. And none of us want to feel like that. So the brain does exactly what it's designed to do. It stops, but it's not a dramatic stop. It's just quietly that the habit is going to decay. So the routine drifts, and weeks later, when you had someone who is silently watching you finally reaches out and you're no longer showing up, the moment the compounding would have paid off has passed and you're not there to collect on it. So the people who build consistent pipelines on LinkedIn haven't conquered this neurological problem. They just made structure around it. They've built a daily routine that's simple enough to follow and execute on without needing the motivation to make it happen. That it has enough specificity that the brain doesn't have to make decisions on what to do, that it just plugs into a system and just checks off a list of things to do on LinkedIn to get those 2 to 3 booked appointments happening every single day. So you've probably heard that LinkedIn takes about 30 days to start working. Most people treat it as motivational advice and they just push through it, but it's actually a mechanical description of how trust compounds. So the first 2 weeks, you're just a brand new face. Your ideal clients might see you comment, notice your post, glance your profile, but you're just filed as the unclassified. So they don't have a category to put you in. There's no stored familiarity to build on that. And in weeks 3 and 4, something starts to shift. So the people who mattered in your target market, those are the ones who are seeing you regularly because you become consistent and you keep showing up in the right place. This is not a small thing. This is what the foundation is built on. So after 30 days of consistent, targeted activity, the compounding becomes behaviorally visible. So the same DM that would have gotten no reply in week 2 gets a reply in week 5. But it's not because you wrote it differently, but because the person receiving it has already had 6 weeks of low-level familiarity with your name on it. So the cold contact isn't cold anymore. The trust was built invisibly over time in those increments that are too small for you to see to understand that this actually matters. So we've built a 60-minute workout, and it's built entirely around getting those through those first 30 days without the brain needing to convince you. It's the daily structure, the specificity of the sequence of activities, and the way that they are ordered and what matters. So I like to think about this as kind of like going to the gym. And this happens a lot. And I see this with a lot of my clients, is that nobody expects to walk into a gym, pick up a set of weights, work out for 3 days, and come out looking shredded like they're ready to compete in a bodybuilding competition. Be it male or female, we know that it does not work that way. That you have to show up to the gym consistently. You cannot cheat on your diet. That you must do this every single day. That there are literally no days off if you want to have that elite body. And what the other problem that a lot of us don't see is that you are not in this process, when you're brand new and you don't have a huge brand and you don't have millions of dollars of spend behind you in order to do a whole bunch of advertisement, and you want to continue on with this analogy further, you're basically a 70-year-old man who has a really hard time putting on muscle. So you're already at a huge disadvantage when you want to get your body in the best shape possible. This is the same thing when you enter into trying to build a pipeline for a business that nobody knows about, for a business that has not much of a brand. Okay, the good news is that the 60-minute workout that we use can work on any stage of business that you're at. It does not matter because we are looking to create compounding results. So the daily routine is not about just surviving in this invisible period. It's about building efficiency. It's about giving your brain a place to say, you know what, it's okay if I just follow this and do this every day. I know that these results are going to come out at the end. So when you have a very structured routine, it is very easy for your brain to come in and commit to. When you're not having to think about what the actions that you need to do to actually get results on LinkedIn, it is a very nice place to be because you can be very specific, it is very simple, and it's automatic. When the brain doesn't have to decide on what to do next, it can just execute on the process that books you with 2 to 3 calls a day. So if you want to check out what this looks like, I offer a $7 masterclass. It is a 45-minute masterclass where I break down the exact steps that we execute on a daily basis for how we book 2 to 3 calls per day. And it is built for the delayed reward problem. It is built with a minute-by-minute breakdown, and it's engineered for what happens on day 31 when you start getting those book calls in the door. So if you want to see what that looks like, click on the link below. It is a $7 one-time. There's no subscription charges, no charges beyond that if you want to check it out. And if you're still with me, make sure that you like the video, hit subscribe, because I put out new content every single week, just how we use platforms like LinkedIn and Meta to book B2B sales calls. Cheers.